What is up, YouTube? Got the Dodge Ram 50 on the lift. What are we doing today? Well, the tires were in really bad shape, dry rotting, so I took them off, took them to Walmart, got the smallest little tires they had for it, cleaned up the rims, turned out pretty good. Kind of surprised how good they look. Let's see, when I got the wheel off, back here is the back driver's side. Two of the studs were broken. Drove it like that for a while. It's kind of sketchy with them both being on the same side like that. But I went by Advance and got some studs so we can replace those. And up front here, these brake lines are, well, let me get a light on there so you can see. Brake lines are looking a little sketchy. So I ordered some of those, but they won't be until Tuesday, which means this thing's going to be on the lift for a couple days. And I figure, well, if it's going to be on the lift for a couple days, might as well do something else to it. So let's look at the table of goodies. So I bought this thing maybe 12, 13 years ago. And had plans of making a lowrider, so I bought it. But you know, that was 12, 13 years ago. I wasn't really sure if I want to do that anymore. But I think I'm going to at least put these drop spindles on it and lower the back. Do like a 2-inch drop. I don't want to drop it too low because I still have a lot of work I want to do to it. And I want to be able to get it on and off the lift easy. If you look under the frame, we've got a transmission cross member and on an exhaust hanger / emergency brake cross member that hang down pretty low. So we need to work on those so we can get them up even with the frame from dropping anymore. These hangers will need to be modified, but I'm not going to worry about any of that right now. I'm just going to put a small drop on it, make the truck a little more fun to drive. So I need to sand those down and paint them before I put them on. I've got a starter, I've got an alternator for it. So the alternator on it quit working a couple years ago, and I took it apart and I bent the little springs that hold the brushes to put a little more pressure on them, so they're probably down to metal now. And whenever I first rebuilt the top end of the motor, when I first bought it, had a bad head gasket. It didn't smoke before I did it, and as soon as I was done, and the engine actually ran good, I realized it smoked, so I did a valve job on it. Well, not a valve job, I just replaced the valve seals with the head still on the engine. It was the first time I'd done that. And after that, it couldn't get it to crank, and was convinced I had everything right, and I was drinking some cold snacks and maybe cranked it a little too much. Anyway, I burnt my starter up pretty bad, so it'll still crank, but it struggles. And so I got a new starter for that, and I got this supercharger a while back. It's kind of a toy supercharger, just be an experiment. It's a 500cc supercharger, and this is a 2-liter engine, so it's very undersized for it, but I thought maybe we would over rev it a little bit, see if we can make a little bit of boost. It might be a fun project. I don't know if I'm going to be able to fit this in there. I've been looking on holding it down in the engine bay. It's pretty tight. I got all new ball joints and bushings and stuff. I'm not going to put those on yet. And down here, that's a gasket set for the engine. So what I need to do is pull this engine apart and do a quick rebuild on it, because it leaks a lot of oil. And not going to do that today, but that is coming up, and that's why I don't want to drop it too much, because that's going to make that difficult. But once we do that, I figure we might see if we can get that supercharger on there. Ultimately, I want to put a 4G63 motor in here. I have a lot of the parts for that already, so I'm still working on that. But anyway, let's get these wheel studs in there and start looking at taking the front apart so we can put these drop spindles on there. Alright, so I didn't take anything apart in here. You can see it's leaking a little bit of probably brake fluid there. My brake fluid slowly goes down, so it's probably that one and maybe even the one on the other side that are leaking. But that's not bad, so I'm not going to worry about that yet. But I was able to get these out without taking it apart, and I think I can get them back in. Looks like I can. Of course, there's no good way to press them in, but thinking maybe put some washers on there, tighten the lug nuts up, maybe I can get them pulled through. So I'm gonna try that. Alright, so here's the setup. I'm gonna put that big nut on there. And I'll get the lug nut. Somebody's in trouble. Let's see if we can force it on with the impact wrench. I think it's going in. Let me see if I can get y'all where you can see. Alright, that worked really good. So, should be able to put this on there now. Alright. That ended up being an easy fix. Alright, so the part we want to replace is the spindle right here. So we need to take the brakes off. We need to pull the hub off. And yeah, and then just unbolt the spindle from the control arms and from the steering arm, which will be breaking this ball joint. There's a ball joint at the bottom, and then the steering ball joint's over here. So let's get this off. Alright, to get the brakes off, there's two 17mm bolts back here. That's one of them right in the center of the screen, and the other one is right in the center of the screen now, the far one. Well, the middle one, I guess. There's three. So I can't film that, but that's what I'm going to be working on. Looks like we have one more little screw right there attached to the dust shield. Get that off real quick. Okay, so we need to get this cap off now so we can take the nut off the spindle. Alright. Okay. We got a cotter pin here we need to get out, and this nut shouldn't be tight. I mean, it'll be snugged up but not tight because it's actually pressing on the bearings, so the cotter pin's what keeps it from unscrewing. use the correct tool. Alright, turns out this isn't the correct tool. Let's try this tool. This is so much nicer when the lift. I've always done this on the ground before. Alright, see if we can get this out with a channel locks. Oh yeah, it's not even tight. Looks like I put some fresh grease on it at some point because there's some pretty nasty grease in there. Alright, so this should slide off now. Got our washer, got a bearing. And there's a bearing in the back and a grease seal, which will just stay in there. Okay, so we need to get this dust cover off. We found a rag and wipe my hands off. I'm gonna go with 14. Yep. Okay, well there's a nut on the back spinning. Alright, let me get a wrench. Oh, way to grab that one. There we go. Alright, so there's our spindle. So let's compare that one to the drop spindle. Alright, so here's our drop spindle. You can see, let's see, get everything in there. Here's our drop spindles. You can see it's pretty much the same thing except for the spindle's actually higher, but all the connection points when they line up. So as you can see, the distance between there and there should be 2 inches. These are 2-inch spindles, I believe. If it says that somewhere, I might have bought 3-inch spindles. They make 3-inch spindles? That's a pretty big difference. Bought these a long time ago. Let me measure that. Alright. No, 2-inch spindles. Okay, so we need to get this off now. And it's going to get a little sketchy because there's a spring there. So we can't just... You see the spring? There's a spring, so we can't just undo everything or the bottom will fly down. But, so what we're going to have to do is get everything loose, drop the lift down, and put a jack under here to hold the lower control arm down to keep the spring compressed. And then we can take it the rest of the way off and put the new one on it. Alright, we're looking at the bottom ball joint. I've already broke the top one loose. I filmed it, but I hit the camera with the hammer and it stopped recording it and then didn't save the video. So anyway, I've got the nut backed off about 1/8 of an inch, and I've always used a ball joint splitter, which I would basically, it's a fork and you stick it through there and you hit it with a hammer, and it's got kind of a taper on it and it'll split them apart. And the shaft going through here, it has a taper on it, so we're just trying to break that taper loose. So you can see I've been hitting on this. I did it on the top one. Yeah, everybody on YouTube just seems to hit these and they break loose, which I've never done before. But I did it on the top one here and it popped loose. So I've already done it on the bottom, it didn't work, but I'll beat it a little more since we didn't get it on camera. And if it doesn't work, we'll go and find a ball joint splitter. I believe I have one somewhere. Alright, I'm going to stop there. I've already been beating on it a lot because, like I said, I was recording it before. It's cast iron. I don't want to break it. I'm not going to use it again, but maybe I need a bigger hammer. Maybe I need to hit it harder. I don't know, but let's see if I have a ball joint splitter before we go any farther. Alright, so this is my ball joint splitter kit. So you have a couple of different ones, these, and you found the one that fits, right? It's probably going to be the smallest one. You squeeze it in there. And then you have this piece that you screw into it. Like that. And then you just beat on this shaft with a hammer and it should break loose. It also has this attachment, which allows you to put it on an air hammer. But I think we'll just beat on it and see what happens. Let's see if I can find a big hammer. Just heard it pop. So that one's loose. It's not all of them are loose. We can go ahead and take this one off. There's no tension on it. Alright, so now as I'm loosening this, the ball joint's spinning with the nut, so you can't get it off. So what you have to do is kind of reseat it a little bit. just enough so you can get the nut off. It should come back out easily. Alright, so now we're going to have to drop the truck down and put a jack under this lower control arm to support it. Actually, I'm going to do the other side like this. I'm not going to film that. And we'll come back later because I need to sandblast the new drop spindles and spray paint them black. So when I get those, we'll be back and maybe film a little bit of putting it back together, but it's basically just the reverse of this. Okay, so I got the passenger side to the same point the driver's side is on the front. So I'm going to have to sandblast those spindles and spray paint them, and they'll dry overnight. So I think we're done with the front for right now other than that. So this is the back. So the front we're dropping 2 inches. The back generally want to drop more than the front because trucks come factory with the back up a little bit. So we'll get some 3-inch blocks from the auto parts store and put them on here. And this is the leaf spring here, and that's where the rear end sits on the leaf spring. So what we'll do is we'll put a 3-inch block between the leaf spring and the rear end, and that'll basically lift the rear end up 3 inches, which will drop the back of the truck. So if you're going lower than me, the way we would typically do it is, so you have 3 springs here. One of them's an overload spring. It only really comes into play if you get a really heavy load. And then these 2 are clamped together, but only one of them's actually attached to the truck. So you can remove 1 or 2 of these and basically turn the leaf spring into something that just keeps the rear end, you know, going straight. Doesn't actually hold the truck up. And then you would replace the shock right here with an air shock, which you can buy from the auto parts store. They'll have one for the truck, but it's probably too long, so you have to go with a different one. I don't remember which air shocks are shorter, but you have to kind of look at that. I think you can get an old Toyota pickup truck one, and it's pretty short. You can see I have a bunch of dirt dabblers on that rear end. And check out that gas tank. It's crazy. I might knock those off while we're under here. So, other thing, so we're just going to put a 3-inch block on here, and that'll drop the back 3 inches. So this bump stop is to keep the rear end from banging the frame, or to keep the differential or whatever you would call that from hitting the bed, I guess. I don't know if it can in this truck or not, but so now that if we bring this up 3 inches, that's going to be pretty close to the frame when it's sitting down, and it's just going to be constantly hitting it, and we'd like to get that travel so we can get a little better ride. So we're also going to have to cut this down some. I don't know, I'm not going to cut 3 inches probably off, maybe 2 inches, get that pointy part off, and that'll leave us a good inch of a bump stop, you know, for if we hit a big bump or something. So I can start taking this apart. It's basically just these 2 U-bolts here go down to this plate. It also, the shock bolts too. So we need to take these out, take those U-bolts off on both sides, and we might have to disconnect the shock just to make it a little more manageable so it won't be fighting us. And that'll set us up for blocks, but like I said, I don't have blocks yet. So that's as far as we'll be able to go on the back. But I'll get blocks tomorrow, and we can do that. And then I should have the new oil line on Tuesday, so hopefully by then we'll be done with everything. Alright, so since we're going with 3-inch blocks, it'll also come with some new U-bolts that are longer. And the bump stop came out, so we can figure out how to cut that down. You could just leave it out, but like I said, I'm gonna put it in there so we'll have something. While I was down here, I noticed something else. Fix the tripod real quick. You see that spring coming off the rear end and going up there? That's like a valve to where when the rear end goes up, it assumes there's a heavy load in the back of the truck and it makes the back brake stronger. I believe that's how it works. So we don't want that to happen. Need to figure out if there's a way we can disable that. Let me think about that. Okay, so I was kind of thinking that this lever moves right there. I was kind of thinking it would pull it in when the truck was up, thinking that this would come down, but this can't come down anymore. This is all the way down, so this would be like a super light load situation. So as the spring is pretty much parallel, as the rear end goes up, it would pull it. So all we need to do is disconnect the spring so it won't pull it. And I think we'll get low pressure to the back all the time, which is what we want. So I'm just gonna take this bracket off because it sticks up higher in the rear end, and I don't want it to hit anything. I don't think it would right now, but you know, if we went lower in the future, I'll take it off anyways. Doing a great camera job. Alright, let me finish that up. So I got the bump stop cut down. I tried a couple different things. The bandsaw is what I was hoping would work, but of course it kept catching the blade because it was rubber. But anyway, I ended up using a hacksaw, and it went pretty quick. It only took like a couple minutes. And what I did is I just kept spraying PB Blaster on it to lubricate the blade, and as soon as it get hard to saw, you just sprayed a little more in there and it loosened right back up. So it's kind of cool. It smoked a little bit, so that's always fun. So I don't know, that's how I did it. Alright, so I went out to dinner, and while I was out, I picked up some blocks. This is what they look like. So this will go into the rear end, and this right here, this little divot, will fit into the top of this bolt right here, and that's the alignment for the rear end. And then you have to get bolts too. So we got some real long U-bolts, and they sell these with the rounded top and with the square top, so just make sure you get the ones that match what you're doing. So we should just be able to lift this up. Under it like that. So they also come with these 2-degree spacers which you can use to angle it slightly if you need to. So I'm not really sure which way to do it, but I guess the yeah, I'm not sure. I'm gonna leave those off for now. I'll look that up later, but I think this should just go in there. Just like that. So we'll go ahead and put it on the other side. Okay, so the angled shims are to just help with the alignment of the rear end and the drive shaft. Since you've lifted up 3 inches, you've kind of thrown the orientation off. I believe we need to angle it forward because the rear end's going up higher, so I'm going to put them in that way. I've never put them in before, so it's not that big of a deal. It's only 3 degrees, but we'll stick them in there since we got them. then our U-bolts. Unscrew the nuts from them. They go over the top just like we did before. It should slide into this bottom bracket if we got the right size. Looks like we did. And don't forget our our bump stop. Okay, just put our lock washers and our nuts on like before and tighten them down. Alright, and that's all there is to that. And we'll hook the shock back up. And the only other thing I see over here right here, this emergency brake line, it's got a pretty steep angle, so I'm going to bend that up with some pliers just to make that angle a little better since the rear end's higher now. And then the back will be done. These bolts, you can see they're a little long. I'm going to put the tire on it, make sure it doesn't interfere with anything. If it doesn't, I'm going to leave it like it is for now because I don't know what if I'm going to change anything in the future, but typically you'd cut those down a little bit just to keep them from rubbing on the tire or anything like that. Alright, it's the next day. I put some rims on last night. I don't know if I showed that. Just to make sure we didn't have any clearance issues. And everything looks good. We are going to need to cut those bolts down because you can see they're only like 2 inches off the ground with the with the truck down, so they'll definitely get caught on stuff. But I'll do that later. And here are the spindles painted, and also painted the dust covers. Camera's turning. Painted the dust covers. So the plan is to drop the truck down while it's on the lift. I'm gonna leave the back tires on. I think that'll be okay. And get it low enough to where I can get my floor jack under this lower control arm, push up on it, take spring tension off of the spindle, and then we should be able to unbolt the spindle and put the new one on it. So that's what I'm going to work on now. If we drop this down, it's going to try to sit on these steering arms. So I'm going to pull tie those up out of the way. Alright, let's see if that got it. Oh yeah, they're loose. Should just take these nuts off now. That's one of them. Alright, there's our spindle. So let's get the new one. Alright, well that's everything pretty much ready to put back together, so it's just the reverse of taking it apart. So I'll go ahead and do that off camera, and we'll come back when we get it done. So you want to get you some good grease when you put the hub back on the spindle. Make sure and grease it up real good, and if your grease is not in good shape inside the hub, you might want to clean the bearings out and repack it. But to put it back on, you notice when I took this off it wasn't tight. So what you do, I don't know if there might be a better procedure in this, but this is how I do it. You just kind of tighten it up with a wrench. You just want to tighten it until it starts to get some resistance. The nut tightens up, and you just kind of back it off like a quarter turn or so until it loosens back up. And then you just need to find a place where the carter pin will go in. And that should be good. Just make sure there's no play or anything. And check it again when you put the tire on it. Maybe after you drive it for a couple days, check it again, make sure there's no play. You definitely don't want it tight though, because you'll burn the bearings up. Well, here it is, out the shop. Looks pretty good. Definitely needs to be lower. Have too big of a fender gap, top of the wheels, but still be fun to drive for a little bit. Do have a problem though. When I was pulling it out, I heard something rubbing in the front. Oh, let's look down here. That's too close. In fact, it's hitting that wheel weight right there. So we're definitely going to have to go with bigger rims. I was hoping I could get away with these 14s, but with the drop spindles, it's just not going to work. So it means we have to pull it back into the shop and do that 5-lug conversion. So what I've got is some Toyota hubs and a Toyota rear end. Toyota hubs, according to the internet, will just bolt up. Have to make some spacers or something to get the brake calipers to line up. And then the rear end, hopefully, we'll have to measure it and stuff, but hopefully it'll bolt on, except for the drive shaft won't bolt, so we'll have to machine something to make that work. But after that, I've got some 17s inside the house that are 5-lug, and that's why I was gonna go ahead and do the conversion. And so I'll have to get some tires on those. But yeah, it's lowered, so that's good. And so I guess 5-lug conversion will be next video on the Ram 50. So anyways, thanks for watching.